Alright, in this video we are looking at section 3.1, which is fair division games. So we're going to look at dividing up things like, particularly like estates or assets that are being divided maybe when a business sells or something like that. So the question, can things always be divided fairly? The answer to that is no. So if you think about an example like a $5 million estate. So maybe this estate is being split between 5 or 6 different people that are inheriting the estate. And no matter how you try to split it up, probably somebody's not going to be happy, right? So one person might want the house, somebody might want, certain furnishings or whatever, and there never seems to be a truly fair way to split things up. Now, most of us will never deal with getting part of a $5 million estate, so let's do a slightly more simplistic example, Halloween candy. So in our family, there's a fight over splitting up Halloween candy. So some people like the Snickers better, right? Some go for the Reese's, and there never seems to be a fair way to hide Halloween candy, and someone is always hiding something from somebody else in my house. So when it comes to dividing things up, it's hard to be fair, but everybody's interested in getting treated what they consider to be fairly, so what they consider to be their fair share. Now, what's considered to be a fair share could change according to different people. So when we get into these fair division games, we've got some vocabulary to do first. It seems like this happens a lot at the beginning of a new section. So we're going to have first the assets, and these are going to be the objects being divided. Okay, so these could be positive or negative. This semester we're not going to do reverse auctions, but just to give you an example of positive or negative assets. So positive would be, things that you want to get. So this would be things like money, land, jewelry, things like that. So an example of negative assets would be things like chores or debts that you're paying off. All right, so in this class, we're primarily going to deal with positive assets. Then next we have what we are calling the players. And these are going to be the people who are getting the assets. All right, and these are going to be our people that are playing this fair division game. And then the last basic element we have is the value system. And this is going to be what value each player assigns to an object. Now this value can be done in a couple of different ways. You may put a dollar amount on it, so maybe that rug is worth $50 to you, or that house is worth $100,000 to you. It can also be done as a percentage of the total estate. So maybe you think that particular object is worth 20% of the total estate. So it can also be done as a percentage. So we're going to put some really big assumptions on fair division games. So in order for these games to play properly, we have to make some assumptions that everybody's going to go by. One is rationality. So in this case, we have to remove emotion. Okay, mind games, revenge. Maybe there's that one cousin that you really don't like, and you want to get the one thing that they want. So things like that you can't put in a fair division game, right? So you can take all the emotion out. Cooperation is we all agree to the rules. And the last one is privacy, and that's that players cannot share information. So you can't say, hey, I'm going to bid this much on the house, you can bid this much on the car. It doesn't work like that. So no sharing information. All right, so that gets kind of our basics. So one of the big things we're going to need to do our homework problems is the ability to calculate what is a fair share. So if there are n players, so n people playing the game, then we're going to consider S to be a fair share. Okay, so we consider it to be a fair share if it has a value of at least 1 over n. Now this makes a lot of sense if you think about it. So let's just say that there's 2 players. All right, so all of the assets are being divided into 2 pieces. So then 1/2 or 50% is a fair share. So if you're splitting this with one other person, if you feel like you got half the value, then you feel like you got a fair share. All right, so it would make sense if we moved up to 3 players. It would be 1/3, or this doesn't come out as a really pretty percentage, 33 1/3% is a fair share. So as long as you feel like you got 1/3 of the value, then you would be happy. You feel like it was fair to you. All right, so one more, if we do 4 players, then you would expect to get 1/4 or 25%. All right, so that would be considered a fair share. And it can also be more than that. That's sort of like your bottom. That's what you want to get to have a fair share. And so let's do one example in this video. So this is going to be at the top of the second page. All right, so we have this example where there are 3 brothers. We've got Henry, Tom, and Fred. And they are splitting this estate, or whatever it is, into 3 pieces. So we've got 3 brothers, so n is 3. That means that a fair share would be 1/3, or 33 1/3%. So the first thing we're asked to do is find all possible fair shares for each of these 3 brothers. So what they've done is they've gone through and they've taken these 3 pieces. So you can think of them as maybe like 3 pieces of land. So maybe there's a farm being split in 3 ways. And it's considered to be a fair share if it's 33 1/3 or higher. So we want to identify all fair shares. Okay, so that will be 33 1/3% or higher. Now what I like to do is I like to highlight it on the table. To me it's easier. So if I look at Henry, we've got 32%, 31%, and 37%. And by the way, these should all add up to be 100% if it's done correctly. So the only one that is 33 1/3 or higher is this last one. So I'm going to highlight it. Now Tom, he took the first piece. He said that was worth 34% of the entire thing. The second was 31. The third was 35. So here we've got 2 numbers that are 33 1/3 or higher. And then Fred, right, he's the peacekeeper. Everybody has one of these in their family. He values everything the same. Basically, he's saying he'd be happy with any of the 3 pieces. All right, so on your homework, I ask you to highlight or circle, and I don't ask you to do this, but I like to have this in 2 places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down everything that I highlighted, and I like to keep it kind of in table form. So I'm going to keep share 1 in the first column, share 2 in the second column, and share 2 and share 3 in the third. So Henry's only fair share was the third one, so I'm going to put S3 down for him. For Tom, his fair shares were S1 and S3. And then for Fred, all of them were fair shares. So I find it really helpful to write this down so I can see what the fair shares were for each one. So the idea now is we want to do what's called a fair share division. Okay, so we want to give each of the brothers one of the shares. So we talked about it being land. So each of them gets one piece of the land. but they can't both have the same piece. So when we're done, we have to give away all 3. So if we find a fair share division, it's easiest to start with Henry because the only piece we could give him that he considers to be a fair share would be to give him share 3. So I'm going to give Henry share 3. So once we've given that one away, we can't give it to anybody else, so it's gone. So now when we look at Tom, the only thing left we could give him that he considers to be a fair share would be share 1. So we're going to give Tom share 1. And now the only piece we haven't given away is share 2. Fred considers that to be a fair share, so he's going to get share 2. Okay, so this is what we would call a fair share division. Sometimes there's more than one. In this case, there's only one. Now, is it the best division? You know, it kind of depends on your opinion. Not everybody got their first choice. Tom valued the third piece a little better than the first. So we could say not everyone, oops, can't write today. So not everyone gets their first choice. So that doesn't necessarily matter in a fair share division game. You just want to give everyone a share that is off that list. So not everyone gets first choice, but you do have to give everybody a share that is identified to be a fair share.